Hi friends, and thanks so much for being here. I hear from so many of you that absolutely love your Stamparatus stamping platform. Now I know some of you use a different stamping platform or you may not have one at all. It's an amazing tool, and today I want to share with you some techniques you can use with your Stamparatus, and some you can use with your other stamping platforms and some you may not be able to. But lots of stamping platform techniques. I have a new bundle of products called Desert Details. I've been having a lot of fun playing with it. We're gonna look at it and how we can use it with these techniques, but you can do these techniques with your products that you have at home as well. Let's get started. Here's this bundle I'm going to use, and I chose this one because it's new and I'm having a lot of fun using it. It's going to be available at the beginning of January. But I chose it because one, it has some border stamps, which are fun to use with these techniques. Two, it has some other stamps that can be layered. I can layer this one on top of this one, even though it's not designed that way. And we have some sentiments. So I'm going to show you techniques you can use with all three types of stamps. Now I'll show you the techniques, and then at the end I'm going to show you all of my finished cards that I'm creating with these techniques. So when I finish them out, you'll see some of these dies mixed in as well. So here I have my Stamparatus. I have both plates attached. Now most of the time when I use my Stamparatus, I only keep the one plate attached. I keep the other one removed because it's easier to store that way. And most of the time I only use one of mine. But I do love, it is so helpful when I find these uses for using both plates. It is so nice to have both of them. So let me show you what we're gonna do. I've mounted this stamp in here, and actually, here's a little tip. Sometimes when you have a hard time stamping over by your hinge, I'm actually gonna stamp over at this side, and I will not have any problems at all stamping over there, and then I'm going to rotate it and stamp a second time. So I'm preparing these to be able to be used for die cuts, or I may cut them out as squares out of these pieces. But let's go ahead and get started. And I want to show you how we can layer these two-step stamps first. Now, like I said, this set is not exactly, it's not designed to be a two-step set. But I am making it that way by layering this large, we can call it a flower, but I believe it is a succulent or some type of desert plant. And we're gonna layer the smaller one over top of the larger one and use a darker color of ink. So I've used Orchid Oasis with my first one. I'm using Starry Sky with my second one. And the beauty of having this set up is if you're stamping multiples, once you get it set up, you can just crank them out and do one after another. This is so nice when you're doing something like Christmas cards where you're doing a lot of them. So there is one technique you can use with this, with those two steps, and layer them. Now, what's really cool is you can actually set up more stamps to, let's say you have a 3 or 4 step set, you can set up more simply by lifting your plates out, rotating them. Now I have an unused surface here to set up another stamp. And if I flip this other one around, I can have a 4th surface with my 2 plates to set up to 4 different steps. I could add a greeting for a card, all kinds of different things, okay? So let's clean these off real quick. I want to show you another technique using this. We're going to use this larger succulent stamp next. And from now on, I am just going to be using one of my plates. So I'll go ahead and remove the second one just because it's a little bit easier to use. So for this next one, we are going to get multiple colors onto this stamped image, but we're going to do it in a little bit different way. So I am going to use 2 colors, Poppy Parade and Mango Melody. So I'll bring them in here, and we will ink the entire stamp with some Mango Melody, which is my lighter color. It's a light orange. And then I want to add some of this Poppy Parade with, bring it in so you can see it here, with a sponge dauber. So I want my darker color to be kind of towards the center and it to get lighter as we go out. So let's stamp that one, and look at that color. That is just absolutely beautiful. And just for fun, let's do another one. Like I said, I'm going to turn all of these projects into cards, and you'll get to see the finished ones at the end. So I am going to stamp 2 of these that I can then use later on if I want to on my projects. So as I go from the center, in the center, I really dab that ink on heavily, and then as I go out, I lighten it up a little bit so that I get that really amazing faded effect. Now we're going to do a third technique, again, similar to the 2 we've looked at so far, but a little bit different. So for this one, I'm going to use different colors, but I'm going to start doing it the same way. Bring in my cardstock here. For this one, the colors I'm going to use are Calypso Coral and Pale Papaya. Pale Papaya is my lighter color here, so I am going to ink the whole thing with that. Now I am going to ink my center with that Calypso Coral. Similar to how I did it on the last one. I might use a little bit more this time. Now here's a fun little change up for this one that's going to give us a really neat effect on our project. I am going to lightly spritz this. Now I spritzed it twice. You can spritz more, you can spritz less. You get different effects depending on how much you spritz, but here you can see we're going to get a blended effect where some of that water let the colors run together. Let's do this one more time, and we are guaranteed to get a different result. Similar but different. So we'll add this color in. Now you can do this just with one color. You can ink your stamp and do the spritzing just with the one color, but it adds a little extra touch when you do add that second color in. Ooh, I love that one. Okay. So we'll put these aside. There is a third technique you can try, and we are going to move on to a few others, and we're going to switch up our stamps now. Now what we are going to do is actually, we'll do one more with the succulent stamp, but we are going to use the small one this time. I'm going to use some Petal Pink cardstock and ink my stamp with Petal Pink as well. So for this one, I am going to place this stamp in here, and we're starting to do some step stamping techniques. I'll show you several different ways to use this. Depending on the types of stamps, there are so many different ways you can do this. So I'm going to stamp one time. I'm going to lift my plate straight up, lift it out of the base, put it back in, but move down one notch. So now I will ink again. I will stamp. And I am going to put a piece of cardstock underneath that where that is not stamping all the way. If you ever have problems stamping right along your hinge, this can be a really easy way to solve that problem. And I'm thinking maybe the problem was I didn't ink it right. Let's try this again. There we go. So this is one of the amazing benefits of this tool, is when it doesn't work right the first time, you can do it again. So let's do this again. See, I thought the tool was the problem, but usually it's the operator, right? At least around here it is. So I'll stamp this several times. It's just going to create this nice, I don't know if this technically counts as a border since it's not right there at the edge, but just a nice decorative background that I can use to add some things over top to finish my card. Okay, so that is a really simple example of step stamping. Now we're going to do another example of step stamping, and here is where we will start using some of those border stamps. So I'll bring in, this set has 2 And first I want to mount them to my platform, to the plate, I should say. So I'll lay them in here, rotate this over, pick those up. And this time I want to put some grid paper down because I'll be stamping off the edge and I just don't want to make a mess. So I am going to stamp this direction I won't have quite as many times to stamp this way. Am I? You know, sometimes I start doing this and then I get stage fright. I shouldn't say stage fright, start questioning myself. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're going back to plan A, my original one. We're going to alternate colors. So I could mount just one on at a time and stamp one at a time with a certain color and then put the other one on. But I am going to do both of these at the same time with one color. And I didn't quite get over here to the edge, so I will trim that off when I'm done. And it is not wanting to stamp right there at the very top because sometimes at the edges things get a little funny. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to move this down 1 notch, 2 notches, and repeat. I am saving space there that I can do this again with another color. So I want to keep my cardstock in the same place. So I'm using that magnet. I just wanted to push it out of the way. We'll move it again up this way. I'll move this down 2 times again. Ink this once again with Pale Papaya. Stamp. Okay, now I'm going up to the second hinge as if I have moved it down just 1 time. And I'm not going to worry about cleaning my stamps off because I'm going to a darker shade of a similar color. So here I have my Calypso Coral. We'll stamp there and move down 2. Ink again and fill in this last remaining gap. So depending on the spacing you have of the stamps, depends on how big they are, how wide they are, and how you line them up, you may get varying patterns here. You'll see I have the 2 stamps basically touching each other and then a gap in the center. And that wasn't exactly how I planned it, but I actually really like how that looks. I think that's going to make a neat effect on my card when I finish this. So let's clean this up. We are going to do another version of step stamping with some different stamps this time. We will bring these border stamps back in, but we'll take a break from them at the moment. And we're going to use those greeting stamps. This is a way, I think it's fun to do the step stamping with greetings. It might be a little bit unconventional, but I think it's a really neat way to add more greetings, more words to your card. So I'm going to bring in some soft, succulent cardstock. And what I want to create is a border along the edge over here on the right side of several of these greetings put together. But as I mentioned earlier, as you know, if you have one of these, sometimes over here at the right edge, we don't get a perfect stamp. So what I'm going to do is flip this upside down and line it up this opposite way. I'm going to line it up here. Now it is important that I keep my spacing. I don't want my words to overlap. So I am going to keep my stamps within about a 2-inch range. If you have a 1-inch stamp that you can repeat over and over again, that works really well. 2 inches works really well too. So that is what we are going to try here. And when I get to the bottom, I'm going to have an issue because I won't be able to stamp this whole thing. So we will figure that out when we get there. Just for a little bit of buffer, I am going to put an extra piece of cardstock underneath here. Sometimes that little bit of extra thickness helps everything stamp perfectly. So I have 3 stamps. Your smile is pure magic, sending warm rays your way. You are what sunshine feels like. And I'm going to ink that up one more time. Okay, now what I'm going to do this time, actually, since I can't move my hinge down, I could have started at the bottom and moved up, but I am going to shift all of this up 2 inches. So what I can do is shift it up here and shift it up one more time. I can use my magnet here to hold it in place. And if I'm questioning if I've done this correctly, I can check it. And we may do this one by the eyeball method since we're upside down. But you can do that if you want to. Or if you like the precision of the other way, you may just want to choose a design that lines your greetings up somewhere besides right along the right side of your project. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that again. Get it just a little bit darker. And let's move it up one more time. Actually, this is working really well. This was an impromptu decision here, but I like this, and I'm sure I will be doing this again in the future. Okay. Ink these, and I would imagine I'll want to do this a second time again, just to get it a little bit darker. Don't remember if I said this is soft succulent ink on soft succulent cardstock. It's a favorite color of mine. So here we just have these different greetings all across that background. And you'll be able to see at the end what I have done with that one. Okay, now let's bring those border stamps back in and do a fun background with them that's going to look a little bit different than the one we already created. So the one we already created was straight across, horizontal lines. This time I want to show you how you can do this with the diagonal. There are several ways you can do a diagonal, but it may not just come to your mind at first how to do that. So I'll show you different ways we can do this. So I'm going to bring in some mango cardstock, and you can either line up your cardstock at an angle or and do your stamps straight, or you can line up your cardstock straight and have your stamps at an angle. So I think I am going to do it this way. So I'll line my stamps up out here. I want to keep those straight. So I'll bump the right edge up a little bit. I'm looking at my grid paper to try and make sure those are straight. Let's get these attached. Now, since I have my grid paper on the background, what I'm going to do is put just a little bit of adhesive on the back of this, which will hold this in place as I do my stamping from the top to the bottom. Now I want to make sure before I start that I will be able to cover most of my cardstock without having to move this at all. So I'm going to change that a little bit, the angle, and bump it out a little bit. Looks like that will almost cover from top to bottom. And you can always make adjustments if you need to as you are going through this, but okay, let's call it good right there. I am going to use Poppy Parade and Mango Melody. I used these colors a little bit ago. And let's start with our mango. That way I won't have to clean off when I move to the poppy. Thought these would be some really fun, bright colors for this background. We'll stamp once. Let's move down to ink again. So as you can see, this is very similar to the one I did a few minutes ago, but if you're wanting to do something a little bit different where it's not horizontal or vertical and it's not going to work with your paper lined up in the corner, this is an example of how you can do that. And now I'm moving it down just one this time. Get my Poppy Parade. And I think this is going to look amazing with this color combination. Stamp this poppy one here. And move up 2 more. So now we're back in the second notch. The top one is in the second hole. And 1 more. Oh, I just love that. Love these bright colors. So here you can see the look of that angular stamping pattern. I just love how perfect this is. I could never ever get this even remotely this close to perfect without my Stamparatus. So what an amazing tool we can use for our stamping projects. Last but not least, I have one more technique to show you, and then I am going to finish up these cards and show you the finished products. For this one, we're going to create a border. So instead of a background pattern, it's going to be a border. I'm just going to use one of the stamps this time, and I'm going to put my cardstock out here in the center. So what I want to do is basically choose one of the lines on my grid paper where I'm going to line up my cardstock, and I want to line this up straight with that line. So I'm using this inch line right here. I have it just inside so that it's not right at the edge of my cardstock, it's in a little bit further. Put my plate back in the top position. Make sure that paper is in the corner so everything's where I want it, and mount that stamp to it. Now, each time I'm going to line up my cardstock right here in the same position. And I need to make sure that I have the card in the right place where this is going to go from edge to edge, or at least very close. So what I'm going to do is make little marks where the corners are going to be. And that way I make sure I line it up in the same place each time. So I'm bringing in my Starry Sky ink. I can use my magnet to hold this in place. Give this a good press. And we are going to repeat the same thing on this other corner over here. The other edge, I should say. Then for the 2 short sides, it doesn't really matter where I have them lined up as long as they're along that same inch line. And I'll flip this around and do this one more time. So this is a technique, I think this is really nice to create just some pretty and simple backgrounds. And here in just a moment, you'll be able to see what I'm doing with these. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to turn these into some finished cards and be right back. Okay, I'm back. And before I show you the finished cards, I thought I would bring this back in just to show you. I was using this die set to finish. This was the stamp set. This is a bundle being released January 5th. Now, anyone who signs up with Stamp It Up can pre-order now and have these products in hand. Otherwise, it will be available January 5th. And I'm going to mention this stamp set, this bundle isn't my normal style, but I love how some of these cards turned out. So here, I'll show you. I kept this one really, really simple, just with those greetings, and I tied a little knot with a piece of ribbon, stuck it on some gray cardstock, and here you can see, you know, just a really quick and easy card, or if you're just learning to make cards, that could be a simple one to create. This one, I use that really neat background, this two-step, I don't know whether to call it a flower or a succulent, I think it's both. On top, this lovely die cut piece in the background with that greeting. I think the colors look really nice, and another nice card that could be good for a woman, but would also be great for a man. Here's one. I added one of those die cuts. Looks like some kind of succulent in the background with this one. This was light enough in color, I was able to stamp on it. The die set didn't have many little tags for greetings, and I wanted to just stick to this bundle that I was using. And so anyway, I stamped right on that flower, and I thought that looked nice as well. I did add in some ribbon and some sequins. This whole bundle actually comes with some designer paper if you like it, and the sequins and the ribbon. It's called Delicate Desert, and the bundle itself is just called, what is it called? Desert Detail. So this one I thought turned out really cool. I used that border die to cut each side of that piece I had stamped, and then added this little piece down here. I pulled in this greeting from a different stamp set. There were not any small enough to fit, but that little thank you was perfect, and thought this was really nice. Sometimes keeping just one color is really nice on a project. And this one is so fun and bright. I just added that flower succulent, simple little greeting. I angled the edges of that, which is not something I do often, but I feel like I should start because I really like it. And added a couple of those little sequins that look like moons. So some fun techniques for the Stamparatus, and just some highlights of a bundle that is coming soon. So thanks so much for watching along. I'll have links to the products in the video description once they're available for purchase. I hope you have a blessed day. Please subscribe if you're new here, and I hope to see you again next time when I'll be here helping you to hand make with love.